First up, let's talk about Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick is leading calls, the Tories, to block migrants coming into this country from cultures that he says have medieval attitudes to women. Does he have a point? What is he talking about? I mean, my question is he talking about Muslims? Well, let's speak to, from the New Culture Forum, Senior Fellow there, Philip Kiszely. Thanks for joining us, Philip.
Hi, Kevin. It's really nice to see you.
Good to have you on board. What do you make of what Robert Jenrick said? I mean, you know, I think we know what he's talking about. My question to you, he says, we've got to be a lot more careful about these male migrants we're letting into the country who have medieval attitudes to women. And I think what we're talking about is perhaps these Pakistani grooming gangs that have been raping thousands of young girls as if they were just pieces of meat. So my question to you, Philip, is when Robert Jenrick says we've got to be careful about these medieval cultures, does he think that a medieval culture would, for example, be a culture that expects women to cover their faces with hijabs and burqas, you know, as in Muslims? Is that what he's talking about? Because I think it is.
Kevin, I think that's precisely what he's talking about. And I think if we think about these cultures and we think about the medieval nature of these cultures, I think it's more than that. I think there are significant numbers of individuals within these cultures who are coming over to this country who are actively, whether explicitly or quietly, at war with the West. That means they are attacking this country. And we've seen an abominable manifestation of that war just now. We're talking. We can't talk about anything else. This is the wholesale gang rape of white working class children. These are men who think women are second class citizens, but they think white women and white working class children are below cattle in the overall hierarchy scheme of things. So it's great that Robert Jenrick is talking about this, and it's great that he's being robust, but my God, I wish the Tory party had said this 15 years ago. You know, it's all a little bit too late. But we're in a situation where we have incompatible cultures. As I say, if we have a culture that is, we have to remember that we have a common law in this country, not a Sharia law. There are 85 Sharia courts functioning currently in this country. So we have two cultures running concurrently, and they are not compatible. So something needs to be done. And the first thing that needs to be done about that is we need to have an open discussion. Yes, there are lots of Muslims who are against all of this stuff. Yes, there are lots of Muslims who are moderate, but really they don't matter. It's the ones who want to kill us, who want to rape our children. They're the ones we've got to look out for. And we're looking at now, I think this year, we're going to have over 1 million net immigration. We had 1.2 gross last year, 1 million net immigration. That's just unsustainable. And these people they hate Western culture. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, I had an idea, all people, all migrants, asylum seekers, legal migrants who want to live in this country, I mean, they should be interviewed to see whether or not they're the appropriate kind of people to live here. And perhaps an essential question to these wannabe migrants, wannabe British residents, should be, do you believe that women should cover their faces? And if the answer is yes, we do decide perhaps that this person is or holds medieval attitudes towards women. Do you see what I mean? I mean, where we're going here with this? Jenrick, you know, I kind of applaud his courage to a certain extent, but we know what he's talking about. But he didn't quite mention Muslims. Now, if we adopt my system, whereby we say, do you believe women should cover their faces? And the answer is yes. And then we start saying you can't come in. We enter a whole world of trouble, don't we?
Yes, we do. It's a fundamental test, isn't it? It's an obvious basic test, which is compatible with Western culture. And of course they will lie and they will say yes, and then they will come in and all of the chaos will ensue. But I think the real problem we've got, Kevin, is the fact that the institutions, the media and the government, who've just blocked the inquiry today, are so captured and so loathe their own culture, so loathe their own heritage, and put every other culture on a pedestal. That's the real problem we've got. So we can't just look to the borders. Of course, we need to absolutely stop mass migration now, tomorrow, put a halt to it. That's it, that's where all the problems are. And Jenrick has mentioned mass migration, which is very good, but we also need to dismantle the whole ideology that has allowed this cancer to fester year on year, decade on decade. And I think we are coming towards some kind of reckoning. We're coming towards the end of an era. It's taken the wholesale rape, as I say, of white working class girls. We're talking about 250,000 possibly children across 50 towns and cities in this country, and still they're blocking it, still they're saying no, still they're saying you're far right if you're concerned about this. But people are really waking up. People are incredibly angry, and rightly so. So it's about dismantling all of that kind of stuff. It's about pushing for this inquiry no matter what, and it's about not being frightened of being called racist, and it's about not being frightened of being called Islamophobic. Now, there's just one thing here. I was just looking the other day at the government's anti-terror program. Even the people involved in the government's anti-terror program are frightened of approaching potential Islamic terrorists because they're frightened of being called racist and Islamophobic. What they want to do is just say, oh, well, it's all the far right. And yet 80% on the terror watch list are Islamist terrorists, but they just deal with that. Now, if they don't want to deal with terrorists or potential terrorists, they're not concerned about anything else. They'll push all that under the carpet. So we're in a terrible situation, but hopefully shedding light on this atrocity, this terrible scandal that's happened, will actually make people sit up and demand the reckoning, demand answers.
I certainly think that this government is under more siege than it understands at the moment, that people are furious with this. Let's analyse what Keir Starmer said about anyone, and I think this would include millions of people, who feel there should be a proper public inquiry into the grooming gang scandal, because the J report in 2014 was not an inquiry into the grooming gang scandal. It was an inquiry into child sexual abuse, which is a different topic altogether. That was a 468-page report. It mentioned Rotherham once. Rotherham alone had 1,400 documented victims of grooming gangs. So it was not the inquiry that Labour's trying to make out has already happened. Now, all of us who believe there should be a new inquiry, the Prime Minister said we're far right. Yeah, you're hitching your wagon to the far right, and we shouldn't do this. Now, there's two things I would like to discuss about this. First of all, what a ridiculous thing to say. What a ridiculous thing to say that anyone who feels that these poor girls, as you say, many thousands of poor girls who were made victims by these rape gangs, raped, tortured, drugged, treated like pieces of meat. Anyone who feels there should be some kind of justice for them, maybe a public inquiry, maybe some other measure, you're somehow far right. I mean, what on earth is he thinking? And secondly, I would suggest that with that statement, which I think came out accidentally, he revealed the fact he hates us. He hates British people. He hates us. He still thinks it's racist and right-wing to go after these Pakistani grooming gangs. He still doesn't understand that it was that attitude that caused the problem in the first place when the authorities, the police, the social workers, the local councillors all turned their backs. That's why they did it. He still thinks the same thing. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, in a way, it's kind of, you can trace this back, and you can trace it back years and years and years. And I think about the run-up to Brexit, and I think about the years after that, and how white working-class people were demonised by the left, by the establishment, by the media, by the Labour Party. They were loathed. They were characterised as far right. And the problem we've got, yes, the Islamists hate us, white working-class people, and I'm from a white working-class background, but also the establishment hates us as well. So it's a kind of double whammy in a way. And so what you get is, and I'm looking at the transcripts, and it's just so appalling. I'm fighting back tears as I've been reading. You have a situation where there's a 12-year-old girl upstairs, I think in a kebab house, and someone is raping her. And there are 20 of his brothers, cousins, and uncles downstairs ready to take their turn. God. Now, the establishment has covered this up, and this has been going on for years and years and years. And what we have is this cultural relativism that has just left us in a moral void, a moral vacuum, a moral crisis. And when I say we need the reckoning, I think we need the cultural reckoning. We really need to dismantle this ideological apparatus, because it is an apparatus that is working against the British people, and specifically it is the Labour Party working against the white working class, the people it was created to represent.
Absolutely. David Lammy, it emerged today in 2018, tweeted that to concentrate on the ethnicity of the grooming gangs was racist and far right. I mean, you know, the ethnicity of these gangs, you know, they were Pakistanis, basically. Very few were not, but the vast majority were Pakistani men. Many of them, to be fair, British citizens, but of Pakistani origin. David Lammy and Keir Starmer thinks that they believe that if we start going, well, the problem is Pakistani men, we're far right and we're racist. In other words, you must not focus on the truth. You must delude yourself, because to not delude ourselves would be to be racist and far right. It's through the looking glass, Alice in Wonderland stuff. This is our government now.
Yeah, and what it does is overlook the fundamental motivation of these attacks and these gang rapes, and that is, it's racially aggravated. You know, the white girls, and as I say, they're characterised as you know, slags and whores and all of that kind of thing, and they're just there to be used. And there's the implication that in using them, these men, these Pakistani men, are attacking the culture. They're attacking the males in the culture. And what we've got is, just coming back to your original point, we've got this tribalism, this medieval tribalism that is out to destroy everything that stands against it. And we've had, 20, 30 years of mass immigration, which has been welcoming the country. And if you say anything about it, you are racist. Not only are you racist, your job's going to go, your livelihood's going to go, you're going to put your children at risk. You're going to sell your house. This is why people stay quiet. But we've got to break this stranglehold. We've got to banish this culture of fear. And I suppose, in a way, it's up to people like us, and it's up to politicians like Jenrick and Farage and all of those people to say, look, we're taking a lead. This is sensible. We need to dismantle this stuff. We need to take these people on. We need to demand an inquiry. Yeah. If they've got nothing to hide, there's no reason why they shouldn't have an inquiry. But of course, we all know they've got something to hide. We all know that the inquiry is the last thing that they will allow to happen. But people are just sick of this, sick to the back of this. And I would encourage anybody to go and read those transcripts.
Absolutely, they are very, very harrowing. To go back to the original point, I think that we have allowed what some people might call a medieval culture to come into this country in great numbers. Now, it's important to stress The vast majority of Muslims are like you, me and anyone else. They're just trying to get by, put a roof over their heads, feed their kids. They're not extremists. The problem with the Muslim community, like so many communities, there's always a small, very noisy caucus that tends to lead that community and to cause the problems. So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about, if you like, the extremists, those who want Sharia law, those who fully support, women covering themselves head to foot because they must not be looked upon by craven men and all this nonsense. Those are the people who are the problem. And they're so noisy that they terrify our government. They terrify people like Starmer and Lammy. And we're going to have to go in a second, Philip. But I think what we're talking about here is that the problems that caused or allowed the grooming gang scandal to prosper and to continue, in other words, angst-ridden middle-class white people thinking I must not be accused of racism, I must not be accused of Islamophobia, that still proliferates among our political elite, particularly this Labour government. So we have a big problem.
We have a huge problem. It does proliferate. You have to think to yourself, if the industrial scale gang rape of little children doesn't wake these people up, doesn't make them say, sorry, we were wrong, our worldview was completely wrong, then nothing will. That's the thing that really worries me. That's the thing that really bothers me. And the future, in one sense, looks a little bit grim, but it also looks grim for them because people, I say, are just fed up of this and they want to change.
Yeah, and I think that the one solace we can take from this grim situation is I do think the public mood is so angry now that Starmer and the gang are beginning to listen. Even Jess Phillips today, who's been blocking this inquiry, she so cares for vulnerable children, she's blocking this inquiry, softened her stance and said, well, it may be we do need an inquiry. So if we can take any solace from it, it is that the level of public anger over this may persuade even Starmer and Lammy and the gang to do something about it. Let's stay optimistic about that, shall we? Philip, what a joy to have you on the show. Come on again very soon. That was Philip Kiszely there. What do you think about what he was saying? Let me know. 03444991000. First timer on this show. He's going to be on it again, I'll tell you that. Senior Fellow at the New Culture Forum.